Stoicism versus Nihilism. Why Stoicism is not emotional numbness or meaninglessness. The confusion that ruins men. Let me say this clearly from the beginning. Stoicism is not numbness. Stoicism is not indifference. Stoicism is not emotional death. And nihilism is not strength. It is not clarity. It is not freedom. Yet in modern culture, these two are constantly confused. Men withdraw emotionally, stop caring, suppress feeling, detach from meaning, and call it stoicism. It isn't. What they're practicing is something far more dangerous. They're practicing nihilism disguised as discipline, and it is hollowing them out from the inside. This episode exists to draw a hard line between these two paths, because one builds men capable of endurance, responsibility, and meaning, and the other slowly erodes purpose until nothing is left but survival. The invitation. Before we go deeper, a brief invitation. If you value long-form conversations that sharpen judgment instead of dulling it, subscribe to this channel. These episodes are not standalone motivation. They are a structure. If you've ever felt the difference between inner discipline and emotional shutdown, hit the like button. It helps this message reach men who are quietly struggling with the same confusion. And if you know someone who says nothing matters but feels it deeply, share this episode. Now stay with me, because this distinction might be the most important one you ever make. What nihilism really is, not the internet version. Nihilism is often misunderstood. It's not simply believing nothing matters. It's the conclusion that there is no inherent meaning, order, or obligation in existence, and therefore no reason to commit fully to anything beyond survival or pleasure. When meaning collapses, so does responsibility. And when responsibility collapses, discipline becomes optional. This is where nihilism becomes seductive, because it removes weight. Why nihilism feels like relief at first. Nihilism often appears after disappointment, after betrayal, after loss, after moral injury, after watching systems fail. A man reaches a breaking point and thinks, if nothing truly matters, I can finally stop caring. That feels like freedom. But it's not freedom. It's emotional anesthesia. And anesthesia always comes at a cost. The emotional cost of nihilism. At first, nihilism numbs pain. But numbness doesn't discriminate. It numbs joy, purpose, commitment, pride, sacrifice. Eventually, the man who claims to feel nothing becomes someone who cannot feel deeply at all. Not because he is disciplined, but because he is disconnected. This is not stoicism. Why nihilism destroys long-term strength. A man can survive nihilism, but he cannot build on it. You cannot lead others, build legacy, endure suffering meaningfully, sacrifice without resentment, if you believe nothing matters. Eventually, nihilism collapses into either pleasure-seeking or despair, sometimes both. Why stoicism is often mislabeled as nihilism. Here's where the confusion begins. Stoicism teaches restraint. Stoicism teaches detachment. Stoicism teaches emotional regulation. From the outside, that can look like indifference, but the internal experience is completely different. Nihilism says, nothing is worth feeling deeply. Stoicism says, some things are worth everything, but must be carried wisely. That distinction is everything. Detachment is not apathy. Stoic detachment is not withdrawal from life. It is engagement without dependency. A Stoic feels deeply, but does not allow emotion to dominate judgment. He cares, but does not cling. He commits, but does not collapse when outcomes change. He loves, but does not lose himself. That is not emptiness. That is mastery. The Stoic view of emotion. Stoicism never denied emotion. It denied emotional tyranny. Emotions were seen as signals, not commanders. A Stoic does not suppress anger. He interrogates it. He does not erase grief. He integrates it. He does not numb fear. He evaluates it. This is active engagement, not shutdown. Why Stoicism requires meaning. Here is the key difference nihilism can never answer. Why endure hardship if nothing matters? Stoicism answers clearly. You endure because duty matters. You endure because character matters. You endure because how you act defines who you are. Stoicism is built on moral obligation, not emotional comfort. Nihilism avoids responsibility. Stoicism demands it. Nihilism dissolves obligation. Stoicism sharpens it. A Stoic does not ask, "What do I feel like doing?" He asks, "What is required of me here?" That question alone separates the two philosophies completely. Why nihilism feels modern. Modern culture amplifies nihilism because everything is questioned. Nothing is sacred. Responsibility is optional. Meaning is outsourced to pleasure. Stoicism stands against this current, and resistance always looks strange at first. The emotional depth nihilism cannot access. Here's what nihilism never gives you: pride and endurance, honor and sacrifice, peace and responsibility, meaning and restraint. Stoicism offers all of these, but demands discipline in return. That trade is difficult. That is why it works. The man who confuses numbness with strength. This is the quiet danger. A man stops feeling, stops caring, stops committing, and he calls it stoicism. But inside he is shrinking. Stoicism does not shrink men. It hardens them with purpose. Stoicism has meaning, fire, and engagement. If nihilism is a refusal to carry weight, then stoicism is a decision to choose weight deliberately. That is the core difference. Stoicism does not deny that the universe is indifferent. It does not pretend life is fair. It does not promise happiness. Instead, it asks a harder question. Given that life is uncertain, what kind of man will you be? Nihilism stops at the absence of meaning. Stoicism begins there. Stoicism is not given meaning. It is chosen meaning. Stoicism never claimed meaning was handed to you. Meaning is forged through duty accepted voluntarily, responsibility carried without resentment, character maintained under pressure. A Stoic does not wait for life to feel meaningful. He makes it meaningful through action. This is why Stoicism cannot be nihilistic. Nihilism rejects obligation. Stoicism embraces it. Why Stoicism demands engagement, not withdrawal. A nihilist disengages because nothing matters. A Stoic engages because how he acts matters deeply. Stoicism is not a retreat from life. It is full participation without illusion. A Stoic works fully, knowing outcomes are uncertain. Loves fully, knowing loss is inevitable. Leads fully, knowing authority will end. Endures fully, knowing suffering is unavoidable. This is not emotional numbness. This is emotional courage. The fire nihilism extinguishes. Nihilism extinguishes inner fire. It replaces conviction with irony, commitment with detachment, sacrifice with self-protection. Stoicism does the opposite. Stoicism demands fire, but disciplined fire, not reckless passion, not blind emotion, but controlled intensity, purpose with restraint. Why Stoicism is morally heavy. Stoicism is demanding because it refuses excuses. You cannot say, "Nothing matters anyway. It's all pointless." Why bother? Stoicism answers, because this is who you choose to be. That answer carries weight, and weight builds strength. The Stoic responds to suffering. Nihilism asks, "Why should I endure this?" Stoicism answers, because endurance refines character. Not because suffering is good, but because response matters. Stoicism does not glorify pain. It gives pain purpose. Why Stoicism requires virtue. Virtue is not moral decoration. In Stoicism, virtue is a structure that holds meaning together. Without virtue, discipline collapses, responsibility erodes, power corrupts, endurance becomes bitterness. Nihilism dissolves virtue. Stoicism makes it central. The Stoic and emotional depth. Here is something nihilism never achieves. Depth. Nihilism numbs to avoid pain. Stoicism regulates to preserve depth. A Stoic still feels grief. He still feels joy. He still feels love. But he does not allow feeling to override reason. This balance creates emotional maturity, not emptiness. Why Stoicism produces strong men. Strong men are not those who feel nothing. They're those who feel and still act correctly. Stoicism trains that capacity to feel anger and choose restraint, to feel fear and choose courage, to feel loss and choose dignity. That is strength. Nihilism and the fear of commitment. At its core, nihilism fears commitment. Commitment creates vulnerability. Vulnerability risks disappointment. So nihilism avoids attachment entirely. Stoicism rejects that cowardice. It says, commit anyway, act anyway, carry the cost. That is why Stoicism builds legacy, and nihilism does not. Modern nihilism disguised as sophistication. Today, nihilism wears a polished mask. It calls itself realism, detachment, intelligence, emotional maturity. But beneath the language is avoidance. Avoidance of responsibility, avoidance of judgment, avoidance of meaning. Stoicism strips that mask away. The Stoic answer to what's the point? The Stoic answer is not poetic. It is practical. The point is to act justly, to govern yourself, to endure honorably, to leave order where there was chaos. That is enough, more than enough. Why Stoicism endures when nihilism collapses? Nihilism collapses under pressure, because when suffering increases, emptiness offers no support. Stoicism endures, because it teaches how to stand when meaning is not obvious, how to act when outcomes are uncertain, how to carry weight without bitterness. That is resilience. Final reflection. Before we close, ask yourself honestly, have I confused numbness with strength? Have I withdrawn instead of disciplined? Have I rejected meaning to avoid responsibility? If the answer is yes, this episode exists for you. Stoicism does not demand optimism. It demands engagement. If this episode clarified something you felt but couldn't articulate, subscribe to this channel. These are not motivational speeches. They are frameworks for living with weight and clarity. If this distinction between Stoicism and nihilism matters to you, hit the like button. It helps this message reach men who are quietly standing at the same crossroads. And if you know someone drifting toward numbness and calling it strength, share this episode, not to convince him, to offer him another path. Nihilism says nothing matters, so nothing is worth carrying. Stoicism says some things matter enough to carry even when it hurts. That difference builds men who endure. Until the next episode, choose meaning and carry it well.